And your host, me. I've been here the whole time.
I don't have a long microphone, so we're going to put this on a piece of pipe. So this was not the video that I had originally planned to first upload to this channel. I had something completely different planned that I guess you'll just see at a different time. But while I was working on the script for that video, I had Dropout on in the background, as I'm wont to do, and I saw they'd released a trailer for the new season of Game Changer. And it got me thinking, I see a lot of Game Changer clips on social media, I never really see anyone talk about the games themselves. And so with Season 8 coming out, I thought to myself, why not rank all the Game Changer games based on how good of a game they are? Bit of housekeeping before we get started. This is going to be an honest to God, bottom to top ranking, okay? None of that tier list shit. Across 7 seasons, there are 67 episodes of Game Changer. Condensing episodes that are in multiple parts, that takes us down to 61. And finally lumping together the Game Samers, that's where multiple Game Changer games are the same game. That takes it to a total of 51 games that we're going to rank. I'll address this more in the rankings, but obviously we all love Game Changer and every single episode has something for somebody to enjoy about it. So then, how are we going to quantify what makes a good game? What rubric are we going to use? And it's a little complicated, so please bear with me, because I've created a highly scientific formula with a set of knowable universal values that lets us determine objectively what the correct rankings for these pieces of art are. And that is, how much do I want to play them? Because at the end of the day, what is a game if not fun to play? Well, it might be. So the way I went about ranking these was simply to place one and then decide if the next one was above or below what was already on the board. So even I didn't know which game was going to be last until I'd finished placing them all. Was I pretty sure it would be a game from Season 3? Yeah, obviously. Season 3 suffers from not only being from before the time that I think Game Changer really found its voice, but also being filmed during the pandemic. And also being filmed around the time that College Humor's parent company had withdrawn pretty much all funding. And while I think they did a pretty good job considering, something still has to take the bottom spot, and while I think it might be surprising, I don't think it's going to be controversial. Tome of Terror is not a game that I've seen feature on any Dropout socials in a single clip. It's an improv storytelling game with a horror theme, and I think it's the closest thing the show has to a total whiff. The addition of prompts as lines in the stories that they need to finish on really only serves to hinder the players, but in a way that I think just general theming wouldn't. And this means that most of the stories end up just being nonsense. Pretty fun to watch as a one-off, but as a game, it's gotta come last. So a theme you're going to see throughout this list is games that are clearly based on or adapted from other games and properties are going to be judged just that little bit more harshly, and predominantly on how they differ from the original while still being playable. So in that respect, Never Have I Ever is going next. There is kind of a shift in focus in the game to who did the thing rather than each person just volunteering the information themselves, but this really is just a game you'd play in the very early hours of a house party, and I can't say much else about it. In the same vein, 2020 Vision is just a quiz about the year 2020. I think there are some interesting things done in each of the rounds, hence why this game's a little bit above Never Have I Ever, particularly choosing things that could have very easily feel like they were or weren't within the confines of the insane void that was 2020. But the most interesting questions were the ones about stuff that had happened in other years, and at that point, you're just doing a general knowledge quiz. And that's not why we watch Game Changer. Sleeper Agents, I really don't know what they were going for with Sleeper Agents. I can see how the initial thrill of getting a list of phrases would be exciting for the player, and I can see why the idea of players having to awkwardly say these inappropriate things to just regular people on the street could be the starting point of an enticing pitch. But this game gets old quick. It also doesn't really go anywhere. There are only so many ways that people can look surprised at someone who is being filmed while they're saying something weird. And as it's a competition, the players quickly realise that you need to rattle these phrases off if you want any chance of winning. So yeah, I think this game feels more like a side quest. something that would have been happening in a different game to win additional points in something more elaborate and spy themed. I certainly don't think it's worth being its own thing. I'm just realising you can't see me hold this. So it kind of just looks like it's like sticking up at me. Fuck it, we've committed to it now. The Everything Factory has really high production value. Okay, no, that's not fair. Obviously, yeah, the big Drake and Josh sushi machine that's the main focus of the episode is very impressive. And the way the game is set up, it does feel very chaotic, but in a fun way. But I don't know if all the budget went to the machine, so they couldn't put a lot of different stuff on the conveyor belt. But man, do those prompts get repetitive. I'd like to see the game done again, maybe with some more varied prompts. Maybe not even just varied wording, but also in what the actual ask for the players is. Because there's only so many times you can watch a bunch of people cram something into a hole.
You made it horny.
Yes.
Change a Con and its sister episode, Make It Fashion, both suffer from the same two fatal flaws. Realistically, there's probably not enough there to make a whole game out of. And also, I don't want to play it. This is another game where I feel like it could have been around in a different game. Maybe an impression challenge and Make Some Noise. In fact, I think they did do something similar like that in Make Some Noise, which just proves that I'm right about this and everything else. I really like the mini-game of guessing what homemade cosplay Sam's dressing up as, and I'm sure this sort of game would be a dream for somebody who does do cosplay, or is just more into fashion, and so has a much bigger pool of resources to work with than the 12 graphic anime tees that I own. I've just realised I said 12 graphic anime tees. I meant 12 anime graphic tees. That's a very important distinction. Next slide, please. It's not a super new concept. They definitely got it to feel a bit fresher by having the other players ask questions during the presentations, but at the end of the day, this is still only one of many improv games you're going to see throughout this list, and it lives and dies on its prompts, which, honestly, and no shade to whoever wrote on this episode, I think the overall quality of what Dropout produces is some of the highest quality stuff online right now, but they were fine. Please don't come for me. Ham It Up is one of the games in Season 3 that has a surprise celebrity guest. And whilst I won't spoil who it is, I'm just gotta say, Jesus fucking Christ, how did you do that? I think of all the improv games, particularly the ones filmed over Zoom, this is one of the ones where I feel like I would have had the most fun playing it. It kind of feels like maybe it's the spiritual precursor to Take Some Direction. But don't quote me on that. I haven't done the math. I do not know if the timelines match up. The point scoring system is also interesting, having the players gain points for their own performance, but also having the ringer who can basically steal points based on how well they do. I think that's a cool concept. I'd like to see it come back in other games. I would have maybe liked to have seen more mini games. But yeah, I've got about as much bad or good to say on this one. Speaking of mini-games, despite the fact that there are 3 separate episodes dedicated to this concept, I actually cannot remember why I have it this high in my list. And so I went and looked back over it, and thinking about it now, I think this ranking is entirely based on how much I enjoy that logo game. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing bad about the original concept. We've obviously seen the pitch fake products thing before. I think Dropout does it better than most, and I like that they have the actual products there. I like that they mix up the games each round with the voice dubbing and the different types of products. And also, I love those friggin' mini games. Jeopardy for me is sort of the opposite of Sleeper Agents, because I can so clearly see what they're going for. Doing trivia and problem solving spaced out across a one-off role-playing session, using the Jeopardy board as a playing surface. Yeah, I'm 100% on board with that. But I think to fully execute this vision, you really needed more time. And honestly, make the game a little bit more complicated. You know you're going to cast 3 people who know exactly what they're doing in a role-playing game. I would have been totally down for a 2-parter where the problems are harder to solve and there's a bigger focus on the role-playing aspect. But I can also see how you could argue that at this point I'm just changing the concept of the entire game from a role-play themed game of Jeopardy to a Jeopardy themed game of role-play. And I'm judging this on what we got, not what I wanted, which is why it's here. Nom 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 should definitely be lower. I'm sorry, this feels so mean, but I think I really just enjoyed the big mouth. You know what? No, if I'm being really truthful, like really truthful, I'm not enjoying the big mouth. I'm enjoying how much Trap is enjoying the big mouth. But given that this game is also quite repetitive round on round, and the large set piece isn't that impressive as some of the other stuff, even the conveyor belt in this season, I have to put this back below the Everything Factory. Hey, we all make mistakes. Except the rest of this list. This list is perfect. Going back and watching season 1 again, I was surprised to realise that even this far back, they'd started doing the episodes that are sort of secretly dedicated to one player. I'll touch on them a little bit more later, but this kind of feels like a soft launch for that concept. It's also another game where I can see the appeal of the initial concept. As they state in the episode, it's basically just a question and answer roleplay session, so it's cheap to make, and let's face it, there's no way that Dropout fans aren't into Murder Mystery Nights, so you know it's going to be popular. Tell Us About Yourself, I think, makes the best use of the lockdown restrictions and is therefore the highest rated episode from season 3 on this list, excluding Game Samers. It takes a simple premise like 20 questions that you can do over webcam, hiding itself initially within the confines of the show, and sets up not 1, not 2, but 3 full twists. Is this one going to set the world on fire? No. That's why it's in the bottom half of the list. But it does show an ability to twist an existing premise that I don't think all the other games that I mentioned before did. This one is probably going to rub some people the wrong way. As a piece of media entertainment and a singular mechanical reveal, Yes or No might be one of the best episodes Game Changer has ever put out. It's endlessly clippable and infinitely rewatchable as you move from guessing the premise on your first watch to smugly rewatching it after you know the twist and laughing because you know that Brennan's been dead the whole time. But as a game to play, I think this one would really suck. Because as a player, you have two options. You're in a game that you can never win, and either you don't work it out and look stupid, or you do work it out and can't play anymore. Or you're an extra in a game that has been completely designed from the ground up for someone else. It's also a game where once you've figured out the loop-de-loop, you basically have to stop playing no matter who you are, and you're just waiting for your fellow players to get it, just so that you can go home and it can be over. It's also the only game I think that is specific down for one person that doesn't turn out to be something nice for that person, and you know, that's fucked up. Pencils Down is an interesting watch for me because it involves a skill that I simply don't have, meaning that my ability to self-insert and leech yummy parasocial energy off of all my friends at Dropout is seriously diminished. Isn't that right, Brennan?
Yes.
But it also means I can just sit back and enjoy this sort of game for what it is. Make some noise, but with drawings. And that's fine. And something that we'll talk about more as we move up the list is that the strategy games are actually quite few and far between. And a lot of the games are just, here's a prompt in a medium that you specialise in. And that's fine. It might even be why you like Dropout to begin with. But not me. I'm here for the competitions. Okay, so I feel like I've been really mean, and we're not even halfway there. But it's just because the highest highs of Game Changer are really high. So when something is just okay, or even just pretty good, I feel like the most interesting things I have to say about it are usually in a way that the game doesn't work, as opposed to how it does. But this is the internet. If I make a whole video being negative about something that a lot of people put their heart and soul into, no one's going to want to watch that. So here, this next one, no matter what it is, I'm going to be nothing but positive, and it's going to get us back on track. So the next one is... oh, fuck. As I'm sure most of you will know, this is the game so good that it was spun off unchanged, and I've got to say, I think that was a big leap of faith. Obviously that's weird to say now because it not only spawned the most sequels within Game Changer, but also its very own 4-season spin-off. But going back and watching it again now, I do feel like maybe the concept is doing a lot of the heavy lifting in the first episode as opposed to the actual execution. The whole feel of the episode is a lot quieter and a lot more chill than the future episodes would go on to be, and I also think that the simplistic nature of these first prompts works to its detriment. Like, yeah, Zach Oyama doing the moose antlers is funny.
Oh.
But when you compare it to the knight who kills all the geese, I don't think there's any comparison. Like My Coffee and its sequel are good examples of concepts that, for the most part, you can play at home. The fact that each player can have multiple goals at pitching on the same prompt means that this sort of game has a much faster, more scattershot feel to it than a lot of other improv games. And I am here for it. Who cares if a joke doesn't land? Just rattle off 10 more so fast that no one's even going to remember the first one. I also feel like this is a concept that's been around forever, but the mini-games and the variety between rounds gives Game Changer's attempt a particularly drop-out feel to it. As a Cucumber is a strange one. By the time it came out, I was watching Game Changer semi-regularly, but for some reason, I think I missed this one. And whilst it's not the sort of game I would typically gravitate towards, i.e. something with a lot of metagaming or one of the episodes with a big set piece, I've got to say, I think as a game, this one's really good. We get the nice little reveal after round 1 that the players are hooked up to heart rate monitors, and after that it's a super straightforward but very competitive game. And maybe I'm being swayed because I feel like I could both work out this game and do very well, but fuck it, this is my list, I'll do what I want. So it had been a while since I'd been back to any of the Season 1 games, and I was very surprised that Lie Detector was actually the show's pilot. Not because it's bad in any way, but it just doesn't have that classic game showy feel that I think some of the earlier episodes in this season do. That being said, as a game, I do think it works really well. I like the mystery of the machine and how it works. I like that the players start off by only being given whether or not the answer wins them a point. Sam never actually says that the machine is deciding whether or not the answer is truthful until the concept is revealed. And I like the staggered reveal of said concepts to us as an audience first, and then later to the players. I think, as with a few Game Changer games, there is a slight drop-off once the players know what it is the game that they're playing, but it's not massively detrimental in this one. Filmed before a live studio audience, I go back and forth on. And I think it's because it's so high concept. With the mostly breakable set, the fake studio audience, and the fourth wall break at the end, this feels like an episode from later seasons of Game Changer. But I think this game really could have benefited from maybe another test play, because there's just something about it feels slow and a little quiet in my opinion. And that's obviously because the contestants are having to feel around and look for sound-based cues, which means that there's a lot of them walking around in silence touching stuff. But it's not a tense silence like in other Game Changer games, and I think that's because it becomes clear early on that there's not going to be a rhyme or reason to what the next thing is that you need to do in the room, and more often than not, it's just smash something. There's also nothing really in the game that indicates why the destruction is part of it. At least that I could tell. The set also feels pretty small, whilst also being very densely packed with red herrings and items for the correct path. I think I would have maybe rather seen it take up the whole soundstage, maybe be multiple rooms that you could walk through, but also be more sparsely populated, and then have some sort of logical through line from each action to the next, building up to something more and more absurd until you get to the furniture smashing and the lemon biting. Okay, so this is another game where I feel like I'm probably going to catch a lot of flack. Purely because I don't think you're clicking on this video if you're not a Dropout fan, and I would assume that at least 80% of Dropout fans are also musical theatre nerds. But let me say my piece before you judge me, because I'm not. And while I did think this game was surprisingly fun to watch, and I mean, I was blown away by how much I enjoyed the story of Mountport and its baseball-loving people. But despite that, this is absolutely not one I would like to play. And because I think a lot of people would actually struggle with this, I've chosen to make that my criteria. The official cast recording is going to sit just on the wrong side of the halfway line. Karaoke Night does a little better only because I feel like I could give this one a crack. I wouldn't be any good at it. I certainly can't do any musical impressions, but I can make up songs, and as my 6-month-old will tell you, as soon as you can talk, if you want to hear a song about having a poopy butthole, I'm your guy. The books with all the songs in are a nice touch, and having the music played live is also the best way to make a game like this feel more fun and free and lean into that power of improv. Overall, I think there's nothing really bad I can say about this one. Hang on, wait a second. That cannot be true, right? It's not. And I can prove it. So I was pretty surprised and very annoyed to find out that there wasn't really a central archive of each Game Changer show, its game, and its contestants. So I made one, which took fucking ages. And using this data, I was able to show that of the 63 episodes of Game Changer currently out at the time of making this, 13 different games have had 3 people walk away, all considered the winner. But to be fair to Sam, he does say that karaoke is the first 3-person winning Game Changer history, so let's highlight that first, and then I guess we can get rid of everything to the right of it, and we should probably get rid of everything that doesn't have its traditional scoring system, so none of the prize games. Technically, even though everybody did win a skateboard at the end of it, Tell Me About Yourself does have one person with the most points at the end, so we should probably get rid of that one as well. And Everything Factory is basically a team game from the start, so that one probably shouldn't count. And that just leaves Yes or No, which I know everybody does get to the answer by the end, but I guess technically Ali does get there first, so that's probably their win, which means... Oh, shit. Sorry, Sam. But now that I have all this data, I can't just leave it alone, and going through it, some of it I think will be surprising. By my count, there have been 54 people who have played a game on an episode of Game Changer. The person with the most games under their belt is, not surprisingly, Brennan with 16, but followed closely by Grant, Reka and Lily with 14, and then joint 13 respectively. But it's at the other end of the scale that I actually think is worth mentioning more. Because as you can see, despite the large familiar cast that I think Dropout is now known for, most people will only ever play one game. And that might not seem like a very important statistic until you look at their win percentages, because you'd be forgiven for looking at this data and thinking, wow, there are some absolute titans who play these games. 9 people have won every single game they've ever played in. Well, yes, except every single one of them, without fail, has only ever played one game. Except for Ross Bryan, Ooh, well done, Ross. You won both of yours. And so you're asking, well, why is this important? Well, there is a narrative woven into the very core of this show. A notion so apparently apparent that it's taken to be fact, but it's a lie. A false feeling masquerading as a fact. And these numbers prove it. When you take out the players who only played one game and the games that were designed specifically for one person to win, then Brennan only has a win percentage of 53%, which according to a quick Google search is like a D at best. And after removing the 100%, it's not even the highest rated win percent, it's third behind Carolyn with 80%, which is fantastic. That's 4 out of the 5 games she's in. And second place with 60% is Izzy. And I don't say this to be mean. I'm saying it because you've got to give this guy a break, Sam. Fair enough, it might be fun to make games that he's not going to enjoy playing, but we don't need to be making them harder, and we certainly don't need to be making ones he physically can't win. So we've established that I was never a singer or a painter or a musical theatre teen, but you know what I was? A fucking Shakespeare kid. And while I could never imitate the bard as eloquently as these 3 fine-feathered fellows, I've seen my fair share of the reduced Shakespeare company. Yeah, I used to know all the words to the Othello rap. So let's stop with the judgment, okay? You're not better than me. As the name would suggest, Survivor is pretty much just a reduced adaptation of the classic CBS reality show by the same name. I assume because I've never actually seen it. But despite never having seen the original and therefore having nothing to compare it to, I thought this was great. Is it a little heavy on the try not to laugh aspect? Sure. But they're in a studio in California. What do you expect them to do? Bring out some sort of immunity idol for everyone to put their hands on, and then at the end the last person holding the idol wins? That would be crazy. Overall, I don't think I'm a huge fan of the multiple parters, especially if they're going to be released weekly. But this game had so much strategy and gameplay just built into it that I'm happy to let it go on just a little bit longer so that I can see it all. Don't Cry is an interesting one. It feels like the reveal for this one is one of those games designed specifically for one person, comes very late in the day. during the point when they start reading all the letters to Jess. But actually, I guess it is kind of on the early side. A lot of these games don't actually reveal that until the very end of the episode, but I do think this one happens at a good time. If you have someone that you know is either a really easy or really satisfying cry, then this is a really well-designed game. And we can see that just from the fact that they've gone to the effort of building a whole production just to make her cry. But Jess is still clearly having a good time by the end, so I think that's pretty beautiful. And speaking of beautiful... The Bachelor as a concept I'm very familiar with. The show itself, not as much. I have watched multiple hour-long deep dives on YouTube about specific Bachelor series, but I've also watched a 2.5-hour video on the Vampire Diaries, and I couldn't tell you which one of these is Dean and which one is Sam. But The Bachelor seems to be one of those pop culture shows that I've somehow absorbed via osmosis. Which is good, because I do feel like you kind of need a little bit of understanding about the source material to get the most out of this game. I think stretching it over 2 parts was the right call. It means that we have a bigger pool of potential matches, and we get to spend more time with each of them. It also means that, despite the amount of rounds in this game, its pacing doesn't suffer. I actually think in terms of making a game that never drags but doesn't move at a breakneck pace, this is probably one of the top episodes of Game Changer. And the decision to have Grant absent for a lot of the game is welcome as hell. But not for like a mean reason. I think having him go to a different location and spend time with just one match, while the other matches played like a mini game that was most interesting way you could have done that episode. To the point that it starts to feel like maybe they were equally as much of a player as he was. So someone once told me, never bring a problem to the table without being able to bring a solution. And with that in mind, let's talk about drinking game. Okay, the good things first. The cast are amazing. I think this is definitely the most chemistry we see from a large group across the entire show. The set is obviously incredible, the rounds are always fun, the voting aspect totally works, and they managed to fix the main issue that I've had with traitors for years now, which is a separate pot of money for the people who are betraying the group. It makes no sense for the traitors to be contributing to the same pot of money as everybody else. They're never going to get caught that way. I also really like that there's a twist that's kept back, even from the audience until the very end. I just don't love what the twist is. The reveal that everyone is actually sober the whole time, I feel like it takes something away from me at the end of the episode. But I can't really put my finger on what it is. I also fully admit, I don't have a better way of doing this that would make the game more fun. You could play it as stated, but then that's much less interesting. You could have it revealed that everybody is actually drunk and there is no secret sober, but I guess at that point, what's the point? Or you could... No, actually, those are the only options. Do you see what I mean? I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking this. Roulette is another one of those games that, if you told me it was initially based on the cast's pre-show improv warm-ups, I would totally believe you. I think both the rules stacking aspect and the ability to not only be able to call out your fellow players for a rule violation, but benefit yourself from doing so, are aspects that could have sent this game totally off the rails. And don't get me wrong, it goes really far off the rails, but I was surprised by how long it actually took. And I think that's a credit to the mixture of prompts and little extras included on the wheel that give the players other stuff to focus on. The wheel itself is obviously awesome to look at. Out of all the episodes to watch the behind the scenes of, I think this one and maybe Buzzer Beater are the two that show just how much unseen work went into making everything happen. There's not too much strategy involved. This is mostly just a game of pure ability, but I think it's stuff that everybody could have a go at, so I think it'd be really fun to play. At first glance, Sam Says doesn't seem like that interesting of a game premise to play or watch. The watching aspect, I think they covered pretty easily by having some of the most competitive players that we ever see on Game Changer for every episode, but I was doubtful that this is one that I would walk away from wanting to play. That being said, I think this is a great execution, and it's completely down to how tightly written the prompts are. This game, again, does start sort of feeling like a warm-up at a performing arts summer camp, but that's soon done away with as the prompts move into mini-games that feel like make some noise, double negatives that genuinely caught me out even just sitting here, and double bluffs and callbacks that give the players no time to relax. They also find a way to up the ante every single time, and I think it's just another great use of a simple premise being molded and modified to fit the game changer sensibilities. And hang on a second. What the fuck? So Sam just said that instead of being Sam Says, it's now Zach Says, and then Zach says, give everybody a round of applause. Ha ha ha, yeah, that's great. But then look what happens. Sam says, dedicate the episode to someone, but Sam can't say Sam Says anymore because he already made the trigger phrase Zach Says, and Zach didn't say Zach Says, it's back to being Sam Says. So until Zach says Sam Says, every single time Sam says, no one should be saying anything, and at this point, all the points moving forward are totally meaningless. 0 out of 10, worst episode yet. Deja vu is definitely one of the more unique big brain concepts that Game Changer has centered an episode around. The variation between rounds and how they interconnect with each other shows that some real thought had to go into this one. The time loop aspect is fun. We don't get to see a lot of sci-fi coming out of the show, but I like it regardless. The idea of a game that you can't win on the first round is also very appealing, I think. Well, I guess technically you could just happen to do everything right on your first attempt, but really you're going to be playing the same thing over and over again. Every time you start over, you have a little bit more knowledge and experience to help you through to your next attempt, constantly failing over and over again until finally you work out exactly what you need to do to defeat the wretched monster in front of you. Oh my god, it's Dark Souls. Deja vu is just Dark Souls with podiums. Fuck. Now I love it even more. The next game is a strange one. It takes the deepest, darkest, most spine-shattering fear that lives within the heart of every human being, no bits. On the surface, Earnestest doesn't sound like a fun game. What if we did an entire episode with zero joking around? But actually this game really works. I think it's because underneath the white face paint and greasy green looks, this is really just a try not to laugh challenge pushed to the extreme. And rather than try not to laugh at what other people are doing, you're also trying not to laugh at what you're doing as well. It's a game that really uses the space well and seems to have a surprisingly high production budget for what it is. Now, some of that might be down to the fact that it's Season 7 and Game Changer has really found its stride at this point, but it's commendable to get to this point and still be able to succeed on a concept that's just so earnest. The Newlywed Game. I think we've all played some version of this with our partners from time to time, seeing if they know the little niche pieces of information about you that no one else would know, your takeaway order, your dream travel destination, your birthday. So I was already going into this one pretty excited. But the addition of the phones and theming the game around them, I think added a lot to how much I enjoyed it. I think that's partly because there's a lot of stuff on our phones that we maybe wouldn't want sharing on an internet streaming show. And so there's an air of jeopardy, not that jeopardy, about the game already. But also, these aren't just going to be wishy-washy interpretive answers like your pet peeves or your favourite whatever. There are actual, verifiable, correct answers to this game, and for whatever reason, I think that takes it up a level. It also helps that the game is written knowing that it's going to be a group of comedians playing, and everyone's probably going to be a good sport about most things, which allows the questions to push the limit a little bit more than you would on a regular, open to the public game show. I know I said I wouldn't separate game samers, but Survivor barely resemble each other. They're sisters, they're not twins, and they might not even have the same dad. I've talked a lot about how I prefer games that have more time to sit, really show us the strategies and the mind games, and don't rush through the rounds too quickly so that the game is over in a blink of an eye, and Battle Royale is the exception to that rule. And I know I said I wouldn't be negative anymore, and I would talk about what a game is and not what it isn't. But I really do feel like this game drags a bit, like a teeny tiny bit. And my solution to this would obviously be make it longer or shorter, whichever. Either a whole season where you get more time away from the challenges so that we're not just doing challenge vote. But I'm aware this is basically just asking Dropout to license Survivor and do their own version with their own cast. But come on, people would watch that. Just make the cast smaller, the challenges tighter, and drop it down to an episode or two. This episode, more than any of them, fills me with anxiety. Not because I look at stand-up comedy and think, God, I could never do that, but because I did do it. Twice. One time went really, really well, and the other time didn't.
I know what you're thinking. David Mitchell's let himself go. Oh, is this thing on?
And obviously hats off to any comedian who does predominantly crowd work. Well, I guess not any comedian.
They're taking our jobs and our names.
But I think making people laugh with prepared stuff by yourself is one thing. Going out there and thinking, well, I guess I'll see what happens in this encounter, just seems impossible to me. And I guess in that respect, crowd control is the perfect road for comedians who want to do more crowd work or just get better at it. Obviously, that's not the case with the three that we get. They're all pretty well known, at least on my For You page they are. And the purpose of the game is not to be training wheels for crowd work, it's to guarantee that there's as much interesting material for the comedian to work with as possible by stacking the audience with as many nutters and people willing to be trauma dump as possible. And in that respect, I think this game works really well. Bingo, even at time of recording, I'm really not sure where to put this. As a game, I think it's fantastic. Multiple layers, multiple twists, the mystery of the game up top and the reveal to us watching it before everybody else. There's even some bigger set pieces and personalised props throughout the episode, all game changer staples. But the only thing holding me back is, I don't know who's playing this game. At the top level, you've got the players behind the podiums who I guess could technically win by getting bingo first, but if they do, then that's just them playing a game of bingo. And that's not very fun. Then you go one layer down and you've got the players in the green room writing the prompts to try and fill up their bingo boards, but even they're not totally in control because of the layer below them, of the players who knows where secretly giving instructions to a PA to fill their bingo boards. But at this point, they've got nothing to do with what's actually going on stage, and we're so far removed from that main show, they might as well just be on the TV in the background. It would feel so insane for them to be the players, because it's technically a different game. But if it's not that third layer that wins, then the second reveal just falls short. And we've been watching them play a game of bingo around watching players play a game of bingo around playing a game of bingo, and I think this is how it feels to write Inception. Number is just a really fun one that lives and dies on the strength of its prompts, and luckily, yeah, it lives. There's not really a reveal in this one. It's pretty clear as soon as the first slide comes up that there's going to be a task. You've got to bid for it and then do it. We see the format that lets all players have a go at bidding on the task, which I'm always in favour of when it comes to challenges over bits, just because it allows an element of strategy, as you can basically remove yourself from the ones that you think you can do, or force other players to overestimate their abilities by bidding against them. Where I think this game really comes into its own is when they introduce blind bidding. Just throwing a number out there with nothing but Sam's facial expression to go off. I think you get great attention during the bidding process and a greater payoff when the task is finally revealed. Chef's kiss. By now, you've probably picked up on a few things about me as I've gone through this list, but one thing that you won't have picked up on is I fucking love Christmas. Always have, always will. But I don't always love Secret Santa. I think particularly a work team Secret Santa is just begging for people to do the bare minimum. However, Secret Santa, as a game, is top notch. I've already expressed my love of prizes, so it'll come as no surprise to anyone that this game is high on my list. But by gamifying it and having enough gifts that each player can theoretically walk away with multiple things, you reduce the need for the steal after the fact, which is always the worst part. Secret Santa also incorporates the bluffing part of the classic British Christmas game Carrot in a Box, adding strategy and skill element to the game, and finally, you can have a bunch of nice people walk away with an arms full of prizes. Someone's gotta suffer. This is Christmas, so why not incorporate punishments? Just in case anyone gets greedy enough to try and take all the prizes for themselves. Olympics is a game based around the idea of twists. And there's two of them, so we're going to talk about them separately. Plot twist the first. This is a very funny reveal. The challenges are just physically taxing or painful enough that you can see that there's genuine reluctance on the player's face when it's revealed that they're going to have to do it all again. I think it was smart to seemingly film the original run at the tasks earlier as opposed to on the same day, and then show them back to back with the current attempts. The conceit of the episode seeming to be another dig at Brennan's want to win, and so it's funny to make him compete against himself. But they're still being awarded points for how much better than their previous attempt they did, so really are definitely still competing with each other. I also really like the announcers table and the slow-mo replays. I think they're a nice touch. Now the second twist, the reveal that players are going to do all the challenges again. This is even funnier than the first time it's revealed. We can all agree that there's nothing funnier than genuinely trying to break a human spirit and succeeding. However, after the second twist, we are just watching the same people attempt the same challenges for a third time, and honestly, I did kind of lose interest. The episode is basically saved by the fact that everyone on screen is super funny, but I no longer care what any of them are actually doing. I think One and Done is a really great example of how you can be inspired by something someone else makes, but then change it enough to totally make it your own. This game is clearly inspired by Taskmaster and the rise in popularity it's seen over the last 6 or 7 years, and Dropout was making no effort to hide that fact. We know from behind the scenes interviews that a lot of the cast and crew are big fans of the show, and Alex Horne even makes an appearance in this episode. But I think the choose your own adventure menu that Game Changer brings in adds enough strategy that this could definitely be called its own thing. And it would be really fun to play. The prompts are great, there seems to be a good mix of difficult and weird, and the single attempt rule is a nice way of tying the seemingly disparate menu items together. While there's no real twist or reveal to the conceit of the game, I like that the final round converts points into lives for a bottle flips attempt, which stops it from feeling futile for the players who've been mathematically eliminated towards the end. This also feels like one of the bigger episodes in the later seasons of Game Changer. I remember the production value of this one feeling on par with something like Roulette. But watching it back, they really are just the oversized menus and the rotating door of challenges. So I would say that's more of a testament to just how dynamic this game feels. Second place is another game that I feel the community really enjoys because they know Brennan and the other episodes of Game Changers that he's been on. But as a game, I don't think it would be really fun to play. Now maybe that's because I'm also very competitive, so realistically, there's no outcome that would make me happy. Either I'm last, and I'm sad. I'm first, and I don't get the point, so I'm sad. Or I'm second, and I get the point, which feels undeserved, and I'm sad. I think we do see this throughout the game as well. Brennan, who at the beginning makes it clear he's going to do everything he can to win each challenge, does change his strategy to aiming for second to get the points because neither option actually does feel like winning. Okay, you know what? I've changed my mind. I think the conceit of this game, I would be able to convince myself that getting second place was winning because that is the objective of the game, which does lend itself to a bit more strategy than just running at the challenges full pelt. So retroactively, I'm going to move this one up a few spots. Ratfish, who you gonna be? Yeah, you might be surprised to see how high I've got Ratfish, given that I'm not the biggest fan of multiple part episodes or the games that are clearly built off existing IP, and this one is pretty obviously both. The circle-esque aspects of the game are boldly on display, but I honestly don't think I mind that. Maybe that's partly because, once again, I've never seen the circle, but mostly I think it's because the mix of players that know each other and then one surprise mystery guest changes it up enough to the point where this game is actually played totally differently, I assume. But I do think that was the right call. Playing this sort of thing with people that you know and trying to work out who's who sounds like a lot more fun. As we see multiple times in the episodes, players bluffing and then double bluffing all over the place, and more often than not, it works. The Ratfish edition also gives the game a bit of a blood on the clock tower vibe, which is always fun to watch people play. And I'm sure if I ever got any friends, it would be super fun to actually play as well. The set designs for this one are also incredible. Giving each of the players their own themed room seems like a massive undertaking. Some of the themes are a bit more obvious than others. Maybe there are references to stuff across the Dropout verse that I'm just not keyed into, but nevertheless, I can appreciate that they not only look cool, but it makes it much easier to follow who is who when you might not know all the players. So I actually think I missed Do I Hear $1 originally, or I got it mishmashed with its sequel game from Season 4. But either way, this was a welcome surprise to have another game in the blind bidding format to be able to review. I'll talk a little bit more about this format in games that we see higher up on the board, purely because I think they feature in later episodes, so they've had a chance to be tweaked and changed after this initial sort of playtest. Which isn't bad by any means. The game concept itself is solid, but I do think the prompts are maybe a little small in scale, and obviously the ability to unionize is pretty obviously the narrative end for the episode, so you kind of end up feeling like you're waiting around for it. Race to the Bottom, however, is inarguably Do I Hear $1's sort of perfected younger sibling. The prompts are weirder and more difficult to say yes to, bringing in another player specifically to scab and combat the players unionizing again addresses only two real criticisms I had. Every aspect of the game is escalated from the sequel, which did make me a little confused as to why the prize pot stayed at $10,000. That's obviously still a lot of money, but really I think it's just numbers on a screen unless the players are actually walking away with that money, which is totally possible. But if that is the case, I think Sam's giving away way too much for way too little. You know what? No. Regardless of whether or not the money's real, I think the numerical values for the later tasks jump massively for no reason. I mean, Ali got $90 for an honest-to-God attempt at a breakdance, and $5,000 for an eyebrow notch. What the fuck? That being said, the bidding format is always fun, so I'll put it here. A game of prizes I hadn't actually seen before I went back and did this video. And I've got to say, I was really missing out. I think this is the first attempt at a game involving some sort of blind bidding, which, as I said, will become a game changer staple later down the line. These are always my favourite sorts of games. I think even when you don't know exactly what's going on, they offer the players the ability to use strategy, and it gives them the most autonomy, even when the game has already been revealed. I like that at the beginning you're not just playing the game, but you're also playing the writers, which the players do pick up on and start basing their decisions off whether or not the last prize was real or fake, as opposed to just what the prize actually is. I do think there's something being missed by only having specific prizes be allocated to each player. There are some genuinely great prizes later on in the game, but if you don't have the fortune of them being up for grabs when it's your turn, you simply miss out. With this in mind, I think I'd rather they listed the prize. Each player got a blind bid on how much they thought it was real or not, and then the person with the highest bid wins it, with everyone losing the points that they bid on a fake prize. All in all, this is a top tier game and would be as much fun to play as it was to watch. I'm genuinely sort of embarrassed at how long it took me to realise that this episode was a game specifically designed for Jacob. I think on my first watch, I got to like question 3 and thought, wow, this is so fortunate that all these questions are right up Jacob's alley. Like some sort of Slumdog Millionaire situation. But alas, as Bigfoot made his first appearance, it became clear that this was just a thinly veiled attempt at giving a guy who deserves it a bunch of money disguised as a game. Can you imagine if I was actually like that? Even without the competitive element, so much went into making this game. The set is the most elaborate and it looks great. The massive number of lifelines constantly being offered, and they're all really funny. I don't know if the Indeed sponsorship was real. Feels like it would be, right? But it's also played off like such a bit, and it's also exactly the sort of thing that I can imagine Dropout really committing to, so who knows? Okay, so we are officially in the top 5. These are the big boys, the heavy hitters. And speaking of which... Outvoted is absolutely stacked with Dropout talent. I think it's clear that most games are cast with the mechanics of the game in mind. This one is no exception. I think everyone can feel at least somewhat represented by at least one of the 5 candidates. Obviously, you've got to give props to such a massive production. This is, to my memory, the first and only game changer with a live studio audience, except the one whose premise is based around having a studio audience, obviously. And I really like the real-time stats that Jeremy is able to give us throughout the game. I cannot imagine how difficult that was to pull off. But I think it's a very fitting way to be able to run the points for a voting-based game. And I think this is one of the rare occasions where it would be just as much fun to play as if you were taking it a bit more seriously, or if you were a player who maybe doesn't have as much of a competitive side. In a game like this where any person's bit can go any way, you sort of have to just suck it up and pretend to be a fun person if you want any chance of winning. Or, you know, you drop out and back the wife of a former president. It's 50-50 at this point as to whether or not that works. At number 4, we've got Fool's Gold, and honestly, it pains me not to be able to put this one higher. I love the game's setup and just how much strategy players are able to use, not just when working out what bids they want to finance, but also the freedom to bounce off the people pitching, adding their own ideas and spin, the way that a dragon or a shark, if you're from a more boring country, would lend their expertise to pitches. I think the pitches have a good mix of meta dropout stuff and also stuff that would just naturally get views online. I've got to say though, the thing that keeps this game out of the top 3 for me is I think the pitches do fall a little bit flat in some areas. Like, the whole idea of the challenge is to rack up as many views as possible, and I feel like there were better ways of doing that than sending Grant to the chiropractor or dragging a medieval wheelbarrow up and down Venice Beach. I can see what they were going for, and maybe they were steered away from some of the more negative options, but let's be honest, if you want to farm engagement, we all know the best way is to just rage bait people. Escape the Green Room is exactly my kind of game changer game. It's high energy, it's antagonistic to Sam, and most importantly, it looks like it would be really fun to play. One of the very few non-lockdown episodes to very rarely include the game changer set, and I think that only works to the game's benefit, as it allows the players to start playing the game without knowing that they've been put into an escape room. I thought having Sam start off responding to the players live and then swapping out to the pre-recording was a really great surprise reveal. I love the attention to detail with the dropout themed puzzles. FYI, I think if you recreated this set, us weirdos would come and play it. Man, I really love Beat the Buzzer. Having a series of rooms filled with puzzles of varying difficulty that you compete to be able to complete is literally my dream. It is the closest thing I think I've ever seen to a PvP escape room, and it looks like this would be the most fun to play, especially with people that you know, which is why this is so high on the list. Watching the behind the scenes for this one, I think I saw someone say that there were about 30 different buzzers on set, and obviously each one had to be thought up, meticulously designed, and then made to work as a buzzer, or at the very least light up and then send a signal for someone else to make the buzzer noise. And it's clear that the team had as much fun making it as I did watching it. I think the super simple nature of the trivia, whilst necessary for the game aspect, is always going to feel a little bit of a valley when the peaks are so high. Becca discovering the secret librarian, or Reika having to keep going back to the witch's brew. But overall, I'm happy that this takes second place. And here we are, we've done it. The number 1 game changer game. If you've been following along at home, you might know exactly what's left. But for those of you that haven't got every single game changer game memorized, my ultimate number 1 favorite game changer game is this is the perfect example of a game changer game that I'm baffled took till season 7 to do. As a game concept, I think it's almost perfect. The list of things they have to go and get, the prompts being largely odd but not overly specific in a way that allows maximum creativity. I think the timeline of a year is perfect. It's the longest this sort of thing could go on for without the interest of the contestants wavering, and I do think the more of their lives that this sort of thing takes up, the funnier it is. This game does remind me a lot of Taskmaster and the tasks that they set in the house, which later pay off in the studio. They also mention it in a behind the scenes that this episode felt like it could have been a season finale, but they purposely made the choice to open the series with it instead. And I think that was the right choice. It's super high energy, which I love. It's super competitive in nature, which I love. Although that does only really last for the first few rounds, I think if I had to make one criticism, and I absolutely don't, I think you could have kept that ruthlessness up till the end. I understand that from a narrative perspective, it's very satisfying. Based on the cast's personalities, it makes the most sense. But this sort of game is designed to get you at home thinking, oh, what would I do if I had that prompt? And sharing the win is not what I would do. Now, if you're at home thinking, hang on a minute, what about the season 7 grand finale? Samalama Ding Dong. Brennan's ultimate revenge for the years of torture that Sam has put him through on this show, and the honest answer is, I forgot it. But come on, cut me some slack. I mean, I've watched hundreds of hours of Game Changer this month. I think I'm the only person in the world now who has seen more improv than they've done improv. And yet, maybe it's fate that we've ended up here at the very top. I'm certainly not going to go back down the mountain now, so the only place left to place this game is number 1. And no matter what criteria we're judging the show on, I don't think anyone's going to argue with the placement of this one. The production is off the scale, the puzzles allow for a bit of at-home participation. Narratively, it's a beautiful capper on the Sam versus Brennan storyline that's been woven since season 1. And quite frankly, it's the one I want to play the most. After all, who doesn't want to have a go at solving multiple escape rooms, all with the puzzles specifically written for you by your best friend, Brennan Lee Mulligan? That's the dream. Okay, well that's it. We've covered every single Game Changer game that's been played, at least at the time of recording. I'm hoping to get this video out at least around the release of Season 8's Episode 1, if not before it comes out. But regardless, it's been a lot of fun to go through and revisit some episodes that I've not seen in a while, and some that I've never actually seen. And you know what? What's that? You want to hear my pitches for a Game Changer game? Well, alright then. Yeah, come on, let's be real. This video is so self-centered, there's no way that I wasn't going to at least give it a go. But please bear in mind, I'm coming at this with absolutely zero experience in writing or making comedy, obviously. And certainly not a high-value production like this, so these are almost certainly going to suck. But I think this will be fun for me just to mess around, coming up with ideas, and for you guys to mess around, coming up with ideas on how bad these are in the comments. So everybody wins. Picked last would be a game where 3 players complete an initial first round that's pretty basic. Maybe it's general knowledge like buzzer beater or deja vu, or a make some noise style improv round. Then Sam brings out what is the most impractical part of the game, which I'm calling the talent pool, which is basically just 12 more dropout regulars. The 3 players will then each get to pick a teammate for the next round, and I can't decide whether it's best to reward the person in first by letting them pick first, or to try and even it out and let the person in last either overall or last in that round pick first. But we can workshop that later. Either way, we now have 3 teams of 2 for round 2, and I'm sure you can imagine the game would carry on like this until somebody is finally picked last, where we'll end up with our 3 teams of 5. I want to have each round be very different because I feel like that'll make the picking process a lot more tactical, which hopefully will force people to be a little bit more brutal in their reasoning. Do you go with a long-time friend that you'll know you'll work well with? Or do you pick someone who you know is multi-talented and so covers multiple possible bases? There hasn't been a physical challenge yet, so it would be insane to just leave if he's sitting there, right? That's the sort of thing that I want going through the picker's brains between each rounds. It might also be interesting to introduce powers or benefits that the players can win and use in the following rounds. Like say a card that lets you swap someone once you know what the round's going to be, or one that you can use to make another team's players sit out during the next round. But that might be overcomplicating things, I'm not really sure. I think the dropout cast is so varied and versatile that you could basically pick anyone for the talent pool. But for the players, I'd say give me Brennan and Katie, because I think they'll both be really cutthroat about it, and also maybe Reka, because I think that sort of harsh decision making right to people's faces would weigh on her quite a lot. Alright, yeah, this is fun. Let's do another one. So you could probably guess what I'm imagining for this one. And yes, I know I said I liked games that are based on existing IPs a little bit less, and what you've got to remember about that is I'm a hypocrite. And also a game like this would feature a lot of my favourite tropes from the Game Changer shows. You've got prizes, you've got mini games, you've got big set pieces. I mean, come on, they've already got the massive wheel. Can't you just imagine a little Sam in pinstripe lederhosen making his way up the mountain, or a Plinko board in the Game Changer colours? I see this working pretty much as the original show does, but as the rounds go, maybe prizes get more obscure or maybe homemade, so they become increasingly difficult to guess the price. You could also throw in punishments for the players to bid on as well if you wanted to. It might be fun to have like pull a wax strip off someone else as the item that you're guessing the price of, and you try to guess the wax's like hourly rate to be there. And if that's the case, I think this would basically be like a game samer for the previous prize game. So, you know what, let's have Trap, Grant, Lily and Raph to make up our classic Price is Right foursome. There are a few other ideas that I think have already sort of been done in one way or another, or they're just sort of still basic ideas, and at this point, we're really pushing this deadline, so I'm just going to get through them quick as they are. I think a scavenger hunt would be cool. Maybe even do it at like a convention or like a Ren Fair or something, so that the stuff the players are collecting can be specific to that event. Give them a list of stuff with varying point values depending on how high each item will be to find, and I think that would be fun. I'd watch that. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I do think they should redo Sleeper Agents, either as a small part of a larger game, or honestly just try and find a way to set it out in the real world and over the course of like a month. I imagine if they had paid actors to interact with players using code phrases that the players would have to correctly respond to, you'd need hidden cameras either on the actors or someone with a camera following them around as they bump into the players. And that would be massively impractical, but still a very cool, fun game to play. And I really hope they bring back Secret Santa, especially now that Dropout is willing to take on a sponsor for maybe a bigger prize pot. I think you can end up with some pretty amazing prizes. And the better the prize, the more earnestly the players, I think, will play the game. Also, I know they had Paul F. Tompkins play Santa in, I think, a different episode of Game Changer, but come on, how great would it be to have a round of Secret Santa with a guy who actually looks like and acts like he's the real Santa? And I think that will actually do it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, hit the like button and please subscribe. Like I say, I do have more stuff planned for this channel already and it's in the works. And it won't all be the same. There'll be some TV stuff, some anime stuff. But if you like this and the Dropout is why you're here, let me know. Maybe I'll do some more of that. Maybe some sort of Dimension 20 ranking or something. But either way, thanks again for watching. Bye.